My legal name is Amber McBride, and identify as eco-feminist warrior, mermaid, fairy princess, cowgirl, and my chosen name is Fanny Waterfalls.
Thank you.
I'm very nervous. Thank you very much for this opportunity and for having me here today. I'd like to just acknowledge the traditional owners of this country that we meet on today and pay my respects to elders past, present and future, and just convey my sincere hope for a swift and just reconciliation process. So I guess a little bit about me. I'm not so familiar with these types of settings. My parents travelled to Australia, and my maternal, my grandparents, they land in country Victoria in a little place called Rainbow, and my mum and dad met at art school in New South Wales, and they fell in love in the Nimbin Aquarius Festival, and I was conceived in a tent on a mountain in New Zealand. And they raised their 3 children in the Barrington Tops in a self-sufficient art farm, and all their children named colours, so hence Amber. But my grandmother's name was Fanny, which is where I got that from. So growing up was an idyllic fairy princess childhood, which I'm learning more often these days is quite rare. My parents are both artists and musicians, and I also am an artist and musician. So living on the country, my connection to country is very strong and always has been. Growing my food, harvesting food, building the fire to make the hot water system work, and enduring floods, bushfires, snow, drought. And some of my childhood memories include my mother being so passionate about unlawful tree felling, so we'd follow trucks and tracks and photograph temporary sawmills and send letters and maps and so on. So activism has also been a very strong part of my upbringing. So as a young adult, I studied art, and in that university environment, developed a very strong sense for social justice. I later retrained in community services and welfare, and I've been working in that industry for over 15 years, mainly in the areas of health promotion, community education and training. Largely, my experience has been working with people of diverse sexuality and gender in areas of mental health, alcohol and other drugs, sexual health and discrimination, people living with HIV or hepatitis and other compromised immune systems. Also being part of the gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, intersex, queer and questioning community has taught me about strength through adversity, pride in diversity, and how to self-care. And that sense of community pride is what brought me to Alice Springs. So in 2013 was the very first Pride Festival in Alice Springs, and I adventured here where I met some beautiful local sister girls from this country who shared with me the dreaming of the caterpillar story. And I think that's where I first learnt about the fragility of the desert and this particular country here. It was during that time that I fell in love with the river. I went to the river even though some local shopkeepers in the city or CBD had advised me never to walk across the river, and I was thinking, I've already been walking across the river. I didn't have a problem with walking across the river. In fact, I would go and sit in the river, and I loved it. And when I say that I love the river, I'll go back a couple of years. So part of my journey as a performance artist led me to Spain, where I participated in the eco-sexuality workshops run by Annie Sprinkle and Beth Stevens. They're American artists. And I discovered eco-sexuality. So being quite open and diverse myself, it rang true, and I couldn't, it was like all the fireworks went off in my brain, and it was so right for me. And I came out as an ecosexual and married the earth. So when I talk about sitting in the river and loving the river, it's like a romantic relationship is the way to describe it. And I took the earth on as a lover, and I treat the earth as I would a lover. I'm not sure that the panellists here have heard many testimonials, or maybe even heard the term of ecosexuality. So, but that's me, and that's who I am, and which really is why I'm here today. Because the fracking, the hydraulic fracturing of the earth truly upsets my whole being. And I know I'm not alone. I also in Spain attended the first ever Level 2 Eco-Sex workshop and have continued to develop my performance art in regards to eco-sexuality and sharing the sort of the risque with the eco-activism together. It just is a new way, I guess, of also just as an art form helping some people, or to facilitate for some people a new way of thinking, increase consciousness around the planet and how we see the planet, and treating the planet as a lover, and just to think about that might help someone decide to recycle or not, who knows. So it worries me, the hydraulic fracturing, in particular with the sacred sites and the dreaming stories. I worry about the consultation that may or may not have been happening, proper consultation, meaningful consultation with teams of experts in many different areas, and translators being available, and I worry that this has not happened properly. And I think I don't really have much power or influence, and I don't really have much that I can do to protect the sacred sites, and my empathy just tells me very strongly how difficult and heartbreaking this is, protecting sacred sites. So it breaks my heart to see it happening where the protection is just not there. And if the earth is a living being and we're here to protect life, where is the earth's protectors? It's people like me, I guess, just doing what we can. So my heart really goes out to traditional owners and custodians who continue to contest and battle to protect. Right before arriving in Alice Springs, I was literally living on the front line in Bentley in New South Wales, just outside of Lismore. So I'd packed up everything my whole life and was living in a tent on the front line, protecting country, and that's my form of activism. I'm a non-violent, direct action type of person in that sitting on the country, literally, I get immediate confirmations I'm in the right place, I'm doing the right thing, this feels right, I'm meant to be here. And the people that I meet, the stories that we share, the birds I see, it all connects. And it feels so right. And the fracking feels so wrong that I'm very strong to be sitting there amongst fellow eco-activists. When I'm in the Northern Territory, it is very, very difficult. I have to go onto the website and make the submission. I get the confirmation formal ways. It's going to be at the convention centre, and who are you representing? And I'm trying my hardest to play along with these particular ways, but it is not really what I'm used to or my preferred method of protecting country, but I'm giving it a go today. I like to think global, act local. It's an old saying, and I think in regards to global thinking, I hope and expect that this inquiry is looking at the whole planet in regards to fracking. Chemicals unknown being stabbed into the earth. It's happening elsewhere. I'm sure you've got all these informations about the water catching on fire in America and all these stories where fracking is happening, and that there is evidence of extreme health issues associated with the fracking process and the outcomes from fracking, when places like Bolivia are passing law in 2010 for the rights of Mother Earth. It's interesting, there's a conversation happening amongst ecosexuals about Earth Mother and Earth Lover, and you look at the way we treat the mother. I guess it also calls to my inner feminist coming out. It's interesting to be presenting to 7 neckties. I guess that is also increasing my feeling of uncomfortability, in that that's not necessarily recognised as a safe place for me. But they do, across the planet, pass these incredible laws. Not really, but they are, I guess, from where we sit today, incredible, that it's guaranteeing regeneration. In that particular law for the rights of Mother Earth is protection of water from contamination. So it's quite interesting that there are places on the planet already making these amazing healing gestures and safeguarding and protecting the planet, and where there's the polar opposite happening with exemptions from disclosing chemicals being used during hydraulic fracturing. and with the possibility that the central desert water source will be irreparably harmed, seems only held off by a moratorium, I am outraged. This threat alone is a significant mental health issue. I'm talking about the anxiety and depression. This threat alone is costing me. And the outcome will cost the planet. So the fragility of the desert landscape and the diversity I recognise. And if indeed the planet is a living being, which I believe the planet is alive, I wonder for the retaliation and consequences. What the planet's idea of natural justice might be for fracturing. It's a little bit trippy-taka, perhaps, a little bit, I'm talking about energetic things as well as psychic things, but it could be something to consider in terms of a warning about stabbing the planet and injecting it with these unknown substances into unknown places, what shake up dangerous materials, is absolute madness, and I struggle to fathom it, and I cry for the planet. So, I guess there's only one other thing, is that in the creation story, and as you believe how the planet came to be, different stories tell different ways, and there's one story that says of a rainbow serpent flying in the sky and coming underground and creating waterways. You might be familiar with this story. But the fact is there are tunnels under the earth, inside the planet. There is caves, there is unknown territories, and I believe that there are beings living in those caves, and we don't know it. They're deep underground in hiding or have something else going on. And the notion of any fracking, for me, is a threat to life, and a life that I would wish to protect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Waterfall, and certainly appreciate you coming here today, giving up your time, giving up your energy. The panel's very grateful for your first-hand account of how fracking, of the thought of fracking might affect you. So thank you very much for coming here. I just wanted to say just one thing, perhaps by way of reassurance, I'm not sure, but to the extent that we are going out and consulting with Aboriginal communities in remote locations, we are using translators from the Aboriginal Interpreter Service. To the extent that we can, we are translating our materials into language, and we are putting out plain English versions of our language as well, and we are certainly seeking the advice on the ground when we get there as the most culturally appropriate way of doing consultation. So we are, it's challenging to be sure, but nevertheless, absolutely, but nevertheless we are endeavouring to do the right thing.
Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, Dr. Ritchie.
Thank you. I would just like to say that was one of the best presentations we've had, so thank you. And because it really does, from a personal perspective, really does, I think, encapsulate a lot of the feelings that have been presented to us in perhaps a less concise way, but that definitely that emotional response. The second thing is it is intimidating to sit in front of a whole lot of old men in suits. But I can
Just
assure
hang
you,
on. I've been to Andy Sprinkle's performance.
just that I think we should say on behalf of the other guys with ties, we only wear them occasionally, and it is there as a sign of respect to you. So that's why we're wearing them. Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Anderson.
Yeah, thanks, Ms. Waterfall. And I just wanted to start off by saying that I know Rainbow well, very familiar with Rainbow, even know Yarpeet, and that Mallee is one of my favourite parts of the world. This tie doesn't see much action, I can totally assure you. I just wanted to ask about, you talked about how you found fracking itself really offensive, and I'm just wondering how, because it's more than just fracking, there's drilling.
Yes.
To what extent is there other processes, not just the fracking, but drilling, or mining in general, I guess. How do you feel about that?
I think I'd used the word stabbing a couple of times, which sums it up. It's violent act for me. All that drilling, penetrating, there's so many different ways I could describe it when there's just so much unknown. It worries me. Does that answer that?
Oh, I think so, and I think what you're saying is more than just the fracking. The actual fracking
everything.
itself,
Everything. I mean, the way that the laws are set out, so that the what do you call it? The tentative, small drillings, checking things, testing things. It's all. It's everywhere is sacred country. It's not okay to just go and stab around the planet where you like to see what you might find. That's how I'm feeling about that.
Professor Hart.
So you made it very clear your love of the earth, and thank you for that. And obviously, because of this inquiry, you focused on hydraulic fracturing. Is that your same feeling about all mining?
Yeah. Although my exposure has been mostly in regards to hydraulic fracturing for the shale seam gases. From my experience in Bentley, I think, in Lismore, which is where a lot of my knowledge was heightened, whereas my knowledge in other areas is not so heightened. However, once the waterways are contaminated, that's it. There's no coming back. Whereas in Spain, where I'd participated in a wedding ceremony to coal, where a whole team of Spanish artists and myself and Annie Sprinkle and Beth Stevens performed at a festival where we all married coal. I can see in Spain some places which were coal mines that is now regenerating. And so I have faith and hope that some mistakes we do make. We make mistakes, we learn from our mistakes, and we regenerate, and we say sorry to the planet and smother her with love, because the fracking, the chemicals is unknown. The types of outcomes that we're seeing is no birds, poisoned waters. There's no coming back from that. So I think that is what has steered me to being quite passionate about this particular cause, although there's plenty of problems on the planet, and people is generally the biggest problem on the planet.
Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Ms. Waterfall, thank you very much for coming here today. We appreciate the time and sacrifice and effort you've made. Thank you.